Hello, we're finally live. I hope everyone makes it over to this new link. Apologies for the technical difficulties. I'm sure Shakespeare started many a play a little bit late due to last minute pages.
Absolutely.
I'm here with Cara from Wild Book Garden, and we're here to do the closing reading sprints for All the World's a Page.
Yes.
Do you want to? I feel like I kind of introduced you, but do you want to introduce yourself or say how the readathon's been going?
Sure. So, hi everyone. I'm Cara. My channel is Wild Book Garden. I've been doing pretty well with the readathon. Let me pull up my little spreadsheet here because
Organization.
yes, because there's nothing more fun than planning TBRs that you may or may not get to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it looks like I've been doing pretty well. I think I've gotten at least a couple of my stories absolutely completed, and I think I can probably move some things around to get most of the others, so feeling pretty good.
That's good. That's
Yeah.
good. Do you have like a favorite read from the month yet? Or to be determined?
Yes. Okay, I have a couple. So a fiction one that I just finished was actually the last Fairyland book,
Mm-hmm.
um by Catherine M. Valenti, which was fantastic. Like, I think it's one of the best series enders I've read in a long time. And then my nonfiction pick has to be Pandora's Jar by Natalie Haynes. I love it. Everyone who told me I would love it was correct.
Is this your
Um,
first Natalie Haynes as well?
yes, it is. So, for people who haven't read it, it's a collection of feminist essays about women from the Greek myths. And it is so clever. It is so interesting. It is so validating. I love it.
I need to read some Natalie Haynes, and that makes me all the more excited for it because it sounds like she really
Yes.
knows what she's doing.
Yes, she does. And she uses humor sometimes, but in an appropriate way, I feel.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's good. When I went to an event and she was speaking there, and she kind of talked about the myth of Ariadne, as I think that's what
Mm,
her next book is about. And she just basically didn't like talk about the book or like talk about the writing process. She just retold the myth with her sense of humor, and it was so enjoyable that I was like, that convinced me to read
yeah.
the book.
Yeah.
That's all I needed.
Yes.
Yeah, as for me, I like failed and succeeded. It's like nothing went to plan. I've ticked off all my prompts by what I did read, but none of the books that I read are Shakespeare retellings. And that's my list was just to read Shakespeare retellings this
Yeah.
month. So I'm so sad about that, but I just went where the mood took me while still reading to the prompts.
Yeah. I mean, I also didn't read nearly as many Shakespeare adjacent things as I planned. I have at least one or two. And then there was one that was Shakespeare connected that I didn't realize, so that was fun. But I didn't read the actual Shakespeare retelling that Julia picked for me for 12 books, 12 friends. I am a fraud.
It'll happen somewhere along the
Yeah.
lines. The best thing about Shakespeare is you can read him or read retellings of his plays whenever you want,
Yes, all year round.
all year round. Hello. Nice to see people manage to make it here. A bit of a longer journey. Oh no, I hope one of them gets to sleep soon. Um, but yeah, I don't think we have anything specific planned for these sprints, just reading and chilling and talking.
Yes.
Do you know what you'll be reading?
Yes, I am going to be reading Beauty Reborn by Elizabeth Lowham. This is an arc that is coming out very soon, and I'm going to be doing a double review, so I need to finish this pretty soon. And it is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, but that deals with sexual assault. And so obviously it's going to be very heavy, but I think so far, I started it, and so far I think it's really interesting, and I like the idea. I don't know, I think it makes sense to connect that fairy tale to these issues. So yeah, interested to keep going with that one.
That sounds like it could be intense, but also it's important as well. So
Yes, yeah, and I don't know, like I've read a lot of Beauty and the Beast retellings, and I know I've read some that are more critical of the original fairy tale than others, but I don't think I've ever seen one that directly interpreted it this way. So I think that's going to be really interesting.
is it young adult as well?
Yes. Well, actually, wait, let me check on that. It might not be. No, it is. Okay. It is a young adult retelling of Beauty and the Beast about healing from the trauma of emotional and sexual abuse through the lens of a well known fairy tale.
Oh, oh,
Yeah.
that sounds like it's going to be good. I'm looking forward to your review.
Yeah.
I don't have my books in this room with me because I'm going to move setting after our first sprint, but I'm halfway through The Haunting of Aveline Jones by Phil Whitaker, which is like a middle grade, no, by Phil Wicks, sorry, which is a middle grade horror book. And I'm going to read a little bit of that, but then I'm going to spend the rest of the time starting a graphic novel, which I'm very excited about. It's called The Last Count of Monte Cristo, and it's an Afrofuturist retelling of the Count of Monte Cristo, where he's black in a sci-fi world and wants to get revenge.
That sounds so good.
Yes, the artwork is also like so vibrant with its colors. I can show after the first sprint, and I want to give it 5 stars, and I haven't read it yet, so I'm
Yeah,
very
yeah.
excited.
You're like, please be as good as I want you to be. Like,
Yes, exactly. So maybe I can get a retelling in there somehow,
yes,
some
yes.
form. But yeah, we'd love to know what you are all reading for these reading sprints, or if you're using them as productivity sprints, what you're going to be doing. What are you drinking?
I am drinking coffee in my Frida Kahlo mug. I don't know if you can see, but I
Oh,
love
love
it.
it. Love
Yeah.
it. Makes sense because it's morning, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And I am still kind of like not waking up, but I woke up with like kind of a headache, and I'm like, maybe caffeine is the problem.
Oh,
So we're using coffee as medicine, which is not at all recommended. But
but that's how it's going today.
yeah, exactly. I do have water too, though. I'll be hydrating.
That's good. That's good. I think I might make a cup of tea, but I'm running low on tea, which is a very rare occurrence for me.
Mm-hmm.
So food shopping shall happen tomorrow. But yeah, I think I'll have lemon and ginger tea.
Sounds good.
Let's see. I have a cup of tea. Got laundry to sort, but we'll also be reading I Have Some Questions for You by Rebecca Mackay. Oh, is that new? I feel like this might be new. I've heard a lot. I've seen this author's name around a lot lately, but I don't know that much about the book. But happy reading. Do you want to dive into a sprint?
I mean, we are at a half hour.
Yes. Shall
Seems a good
we
time.
warm up or dive right in?
We can do a warm up, maybe like
Warm
half an
up?
hour or
Half an hour?
yeah.
Let's read until 8 p.m.
Yes.
Happy reading. So that's the end of the first reading sprint. I hope it went well for everyone. And I think Cara might be coming back in a moment. But meanwhile, let me know how that reading sprint went. And if you have joined since we started, let me know what you're reading. I did say that I was going to start the graphic novel, but actually I just kept on reading The Haunting of Evelyn Jones because it has caught my attention and it's warming up and getting a bit creepier. It's definitely got that haunted house vibe about it, and I'm enjoying it a lot. I think middle grade is just right now my brain is in a lot of places. A lot of things have been happening this month. So in April I've been a bit busier than I expected, but middle grade and graphic novels are really good at keeping my mind at ease and letting me read while focused on the story, but also having my mind a little bit somewhere else. But yeah, horror middle grade is a good way of it being a bit down low and not too intense. So that's what I've been reading lately. Hi, Cara.
Hi, I'm so sorry about that. I thought I had a couple more minutes.
That is okay.
And I did not.
How did the sprint go for you?
It went really well. I got about 25 pages read, and I think the book is really good so far, and it's actually doing flashbacks in a way that I like, which I am a hard sell on flashbacks. But yeah, it's really interesting so far, and it's only about 200 pages, which I think is interesting too. But yeah, going well.
Good. We love to see it. Do you think you might finish it?
I
Or
hope so. I'm gonna try and finish it today. Get one more book in for the readathon.
last book of the month?
Yes.
Seeing how other people are doing as well. No reading, but laundry sorted, so still productive. That's good. And listening to Percy Jackson, so also middle grade for me. Yay. I love that series. My first sprint with you. Hi, welcome. Reading about Edgar Allan Poe, A Quiet Madness. Ooh, very dark. Joining me with some horror. Hi, Kelly. I'm cleaning and organizing, so I forgot to log on for the beginning of the sprints, but I'm here now. Welcome. Lots of cleaning. I feel like Sunday's just everybody's cleaning and chores day.
Yes.
I did our meal prep, but I left all the dishes everywhere, so cleaning will happen later.
That's a later problem, yeah.
Another problem. So did you join us for the watch along? Did you manage to watch Rosalie?
I was not able to, but I saw you guys talking about it, and it looks like a really fun movie.
I'd be very interested to hear your thoughts on it. I feel like me and Julia had slightly different opinions. Because I was following Julia's thread as well, and it seemed like she really liked it. And then I was really liking it at the beginning, but the further we got into it, the less I liked it because I struggled with Rosalind.
Yeah, I'm curious to see as well. Like, so our previous watch alongs, we all enjoyed 10 Things I Hate About You, which is, a classic. And then we did Ophelia,
yes,
which I think we were a little divided on. I think I liked it the least, but that might be because I love Hamlet and I have like opinions about and then what was the other one? I think we've done one other watch along.
I think it was those two.
Okay, just those two?
I don't recall another one. Yeah, I think it was those two.
Oh, okay. You might be right then, because I remembered that of the 4 years we've done this, we've done 3, so that would make sense.
Yeah, I think I felt okay about Ophelia. And maybe Julia liked it the most?
Yeah. That's what I remember.
I wonder if you'll like Rosalind less then.
Yeah. Like, it's funny because, like, I can really enjoy, like, a very, very loose retelling. I think the issue I had with Ophelia was that, like, it was doing, like, very generic historical feminism.
Yeah.
And that was, like, kind of the issue I had. But I mean, there were things I really enjoyed about it. Like the casting was great and
Mm.
the design of the movie and everything. So,
Oh, the things you're saying, I don't want to give anything away, but I really would be curious to hear what you think of this one.
to be continued.
To be continued. Shakespeare retellings, they can just be so interesting.
Yes.
I think I think my favorites tend to be the ones that don't change the text too much.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it can be because when they change, like I don't mind if they change anything else, like setting, make it modern, but still use the old text. But I think when they change the text, sometimes they lean too hard into trying to make it modern, that
Mm-hmm.
it becomes like, it just falls out of being funny and it just is like cringe.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Well, and like I'm sorry I keep using Ophelia as an example.
mm,
But it's like the scene where she kind of like confronts Hamlet a little bit, or like the I'm trying not to give away what they change about it, but like the scene where they're talking and it's before everything happens with like Polonius, like with her dad, that I think is a great example of how you can interpret things in really interesting ways
mm,
without doing too much of that, like without changing it, because just by tweaking who knew about what, they kept the dialogue the same, but they made the scene feel really different,
mm,
which I thought was really cool. And I wish there had been more of that. So like, yeah, I get what you mean, because sometimes it's like, okay, why didn't you just do like a modern story that, like why make it a Shakespeare retelling if you're
mm,
not going to keep anything about the
yeah.
story? Yeah. It's
But
like, who
I
is this
do,
for?
yes, exactly. And I do think sometimes it can be done well. I just struggle
Yeah.
with it more. But also
Yeah.
thinking of keeping the original text but still adding something new to it. The A Midsummer Night's Dream version that has Michelle Pfeiffer in it.
Mm.
The storyline that has to do with like Oberon and the like play people making the play. I think in that one they have some scenes where it's completely silent, but they put in like moments that are not included in the plays, but it added to it and like made it more wholesome, and I could see how it would have fit into the play, but they just kept the original script and then did those parts silently, and I thought that was also a really interesting way
Mm-hmm.
of including scenes that were new but trying not to change the language too much. I think there's just so much creativity you can do with them.
Yeah.
I'm always curious to see what comes out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I will report back when I've seen
Yes.
Rosaline, especially because I love Still Star-Crossed so much, like the book.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I wonder how I'm gonna feel.
I think maybe also because I know Julia's read that too and really liked it. I think
Yeah.
maybe that could make you like it even more. But I haven't read
Ooh.
it myself,
Okay.
so I don't know. I don't know. But I do
Yeah.
think like the concept of her and her story is so interesting. I want to read
Yeah.
more around it.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. If you had to choose a favorite Shakespeare, do you have a favorite Shakespeare character?
Kind of by default,
Mm,
because so like I always say that my two favorite plays are Much Ado About Nothing is my favorite comedy, and then Hamlet is my favorite tragedy. And I think in terms of characters, I think Beatrice has to be my favorite Shakespeare character. Like I love her and Benedict almost equally, but I think Beatrice, I just like there's just that little bit more because of like I just love her, and every time I like read some like a retelling that's like Much Ado kind of inspired or adjacent, and they don't like do her character well, or they like I one of them I read, I was so frustrated because they made it a very like not like other girls thing, like girl
mm,
on girl hate kind of, or just like competition or like condescension, and that
mm,
like personally offended me because I'm like, excuse me, one of the greatest lines in all of literature is, would that I were a man, I would eat his heart in the marketplace, and that is her defending one of her girl best friends. Like I just so anyway,
mm.
Beatrice I think is my
Yes.
favorite.
I can definitely see that character for you as well. I feel like if Beatrice came to life, you guys would be very good friends.
I hope so. I love her. Who's yours?
Um, in terms of just like endearment, I really like Horatio, and I really
Mm,
like Benvolio. I think
yeah.
they're both very calm characters who like see the truth of situations and people and do their best with what they're given,
Yeah.
while also being aware that maybe they don't have as much power as somebody else.
I am very excited for you to read Still Star-Crossed.
I know. I really need to read it. I do really need to read it. Um, but yeah, I think I also really like Coriolanus. I think he's so
Mm,
misunderstood, um, and I want to defend him more than anything. Like, I think he
yeah.
gets a bad rep in some ways, but I feel like he was just facing pressure on all counts, and was like, he just needed to take a time management self worth class, and then he might have been okay.
Just needed to like read some self-help nonfiction and like
Mm,
find himself. Yeah.
exactly. And so I always defend him. But other than that, those two side characters.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of how I feel about Hamlet as a character. Like I definitely have issues with some of the things he does, but I feel like a lot of times people interpret him as being like maybe like a lot worse than he is, and like I don't know. I see him as like genuinely grieving
Mm,
and also dealing with possible mental health things, which does not like excuse some of the treatment, but like when we were reading Enter the Body, which is that retelling by Joy McCullough, um, the way that just like rereading the scenes between him and Ophelia, it was interesting because like it made me feel like some of the really awful things that he says to her, I think could also be interpreted as him speaking in code to try and get her out of the castle and protect her, you know?
mm,
So anyway, I feel you on having those characters where it's like, okay, but also like
need to look at the
maybe they're
context.
suffering too. Yeah.
Exactly. Um, we also have a question from Kit. What are your favorite book retellings?
Ooh. Do you want to go first?
Um, it's going to be hard, isn't it? So I need to think about this.
I just opened my Goodreads page to look at so
I need to think about it. I think lately, like what springs to mind is like all the nonfiction I've been reading around it rather than the
mhm.
fiction. Um, but there must be.
I can go first if you want.
If you've got something, do go for it.
I have a few. So the one I keep talking about is Still Star-Crossed by Melinda Taub, which I know can be a little hard to find, but because she finally has a new book coming out this year, I'm hoping that maybe they'll like reprint it at some point. But that's definitely one of my favorites. It is a post Romeo and Juliet story that follows Benvolio and Rosaline, who are like super minor characters in the original play. Um, and I love it. I think it's really smart and interesting, and I think she does the dialogue perfectly where it feels like Shakespeare flavored, but it's still like I think even if you're not like an expert in reading Shakespeare, I think you could totally get along with it. Um, and then Midsummer's Mayhem by Rajni LaRocca is a ton of fun. That's a middle grade baking magic Midsummer Night's Dream retelling that also deals with like changing friendships. And like one of the things I loved about it is like it kind of talks about what it's like to have siblings and to like feel like some of your personality is just like in contrast to them, but in like a really light-handed way. And then I also really love An Assassin's Guide to Love and Treason by Virginia Baker, which I think is very underappreciated. That is a historical one that is not exactly a retelling, but it's definitely like Shakespeare retelling adjacent, because it's set during the first production of Twelfth Night, and it involves like spies and um, like mysteries and like a conspiracy, and it's a lot of fun. Also, one of the main characters is bisexual, and I feel like the way that was handled in like Elizabethan England was very thoughtful. Um, yeah, and then the last one is this is one that I like don't really recommend very often because it is very weird. And I don't know that I've ever heard from anyone who, like, okay, one or two people I think have said that they liked it. But Bright Smoke, Cold Fire by Rosamund Hodge is very weird and very complicated, but I had a great time. It's like Romeo and Juliet, but like with necromancy. Um, and it's really strange. Like Rosamund Hodge in general, I think is a very specific flavor of author and like writing and everything, but this is like her weirdest book. So if you're like in the mood for something like kind of bizarre but also really interesting, maybe try it. I don't know.
That's where to go.
Yeah. So those are my picks.
I think in a very like this is a very stereotypical answer, but I am going to say I do think If We Were Villains by ML Rio, I really liked it. And I think I liked it because it was not a Shakespeare retelling, but it was kind of like Shakespeare adjacent. And I think my favorite thing about it was how it kind of put a play script in a prose writing style, in the way that she wrote the story. That really worked for me. And seeing the way that they like acted the Shakespeare plays, and then that level of drama was just integrated into their lives, really worked for me. And I think that's one that I always think of very fondly. And then some people argue that Noughts and Crosses by Mallory Blackman is a Romeo and Juliet retelling. And I can definitely see that. I can definitely see how it would work. And I would recommend that one a lot. I think it's just really important and really, really well done.
Yeah. I still want to try that one. Like that series is one that like I think sounds so interesting, and I know you love it. So
yes, I do. It's very intense, at least in the bit. Well, it is. It's just very intense. Full stop. It's about to say just in the beginning, but like no, it just continues.
You're like, wait a second, yeah.
But yeah, some good retellings there. I really liked your list. You kind of covered a lot of different plays as well, which is nice. I need to get back to reading more retellings. I feel like so many Romeo and Juliet ones come out, but I would love to see some of the more like unknown ones, like All's Well. I guess All's Well by Mona Award is doing All's Well That Ends Well. But if we had more like 12th Night, if we had a Coriolanus one, I would go for them. And we're just in the middle of sprints, I guess. We did our warm-up one, but there's still more to come.
Yes.
I read Noughts and Crosses this year. It was amazing. Yay! I'm glad you liked it. The sequels are also really good. I feel like they go in a bit of a different direction. Like each book goes in a different direction, but still a very solid series overall. And which I want to ask, what Shakespeare-inspired book are you looking forward to reading?
That is a really great question. So I'm definitely planning to read Always Never Yours, which is that like contemporary sort of Rosaline centered retelling. Like it's very loose. That's the one that Julia picked for me and that I was going to read this month and it didn't happen. So I'm definitely going to be reading that one this year. But I think even more than that one, what I'm excited for is like the companion book, because it is a Taming of the Shrew retelling, but like really feminist. And I love a good mean girl redemption arc. Like I live for that. And so I think that's what that's going to be. So I'm really excited for that one. And I'm trying to think of some of the others that I'm excited to read. I know there are others. Go ahead and answer, and I'll think if there's any more.
It's difficult when they're all coming out.
You know.
I think I've heard that some Desperate Glory by Emily Tesh is a Anthony and Cleopatra sci-fi retelling.
Right. Yes.
And that just sounds amazing. Anthony and Cleopatra is one I would love to see more like Shakespeare-inspired retellings of. I guess we do get Cleopatra's story quite a bit.
Me too.
So I'm excited for that one in particular.
Yeah. Once again, I just Googled a Goodreads list.
We love those Goodreads lists. They come in handy.
I know, they really do. Oh, yeah. Okay. The Only Thing Worse Than Me Is You by Lily Anderson is one I've heard pretty good things about, and that is a contemporary Much Ado About Nothing retelling.
Ooh.
Oh, also Odell's Fall, which you put on my radar.
Yes. Oh,
I
that is a
really want to read
good.
that one.
That was a good Othello retelling, and I think it's indie published as well. And it was kind of putting Othello in a law perspective because I think he's a lawyer, and just getting entangled in all of that and dealing with the relationships. I thought it was really good.
Yeah.
Really impressed me.
Yeah, I think those are some of the ones that I'm most looking forward to.
I love
Yay,
that.
I'm glad to hear that.
Oh, nice. Nice. I also like it when they can be fun. I think I tend towards the Shakespeare retellings and nonfiction that's like really serious and nice and dark. But like he's also just laughs. There's comedy.
Yeah. Sometimes in his tragedies, he's like, and then we're gonna have the clown just like hanging out for like.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh. And oh yeah, that reminds me, because you said clown, I was thinking of like the plays that have fools in them. There's quite a few retellings of oh gosh, King Lear as well out there, aren't there?
Right.
That I have not read, even though I love King Lear and have read that many times. But yeah, too many books, not enough time.
Story of our lives. Yep.
Mm-hmm. And I know, like, it's a musical, but Anne Juliet stole my heart as a retelling.
I remember years ago I saw The Last Goodbye, which was like a jukebox musical style for Romeo and Juliet, and it was with oh my gosh, I don't know the artist super well, even though he's like super famous, so I need to look this up. But it was, let's see, where is it? The Last Goodbye. Okay, Jeff Buckley. Okay. So it was like all his songs, but they like obviously the cast performed them, and it was so good. It was really, really good. So yeah, sometimes like I love a good musical adaptation. So I actually there's some really good like ballets that are based on Shakespeare stories. Like the one for The Winter's Tale is really, really good. And that was the one that made me be like, okay, maybe this story can make sense.
Exactly. Like, I read the play and I was like, Shakespeare can be random, but even this is like too random.
It is so weird. Yeah. Like, and I had actually seen like, I had seen a production just like of the regular play. And I think part of it was, I think, the design choices they made, but it was also just like the play itself. I'm like, this is strange. Like, I don't love this, but like the ballet actually made it all work. And they also made me enjoy the like, that whole section that's like the what would you call them? Kind of clowns, I guess, in the countryside. Like, I feel like it's very easy to do that part in a way that like is annoying. And the ballet actually made it fun because they gave them interesting like dances to do.
Yes, I actually agree. And I think the ballet as well, it made it make a lot more sense. I don't know what they did with like the stage movement and production, but it felt like a complete play that all wove together more than it did as a text.
Yes.
Could be choreography. It's beyond my analysis skills, but yeah.
Yeah, it was so good. And I think maybe part of it is that like by not being able to use dialogue, they could make characterization a little more consistent. Because like, I mean, the king in the original, the worst. And I don't I don't know. I feel like some of the dialogue for him is kind of like, all right, are we supposed to like him now? Because I do not.
Like, do you deserve things that happen to you in this play, right? Or not?
It's like I'm happy for the ending, and I'm happy for like what other characters get, but I'm like, I don't think you should get off this easy, sir. Like, also like Mamilius, makes me upset. Not okay.
Yeah. So A Winter's Tale is a wild ride.
Yeah.
We have another question here, which is where should a Shakespeare retelling newbie start? I love that you're from Stratford-upon-Avon.
That
That's a
is so
great place
cool.
to start.
Shakespeare royalty.
Should we answer this one and then do another sprint after this?
Yes, sounds good.
So where should they start?
I mean, I think some of the ones that I talked about as being favorites would be like Midsummer's Mayhem, I think would be a really great one because it's a contemporary, so it's a little more approachable. And I think it takes really fun elements from the original without being like a straight up retelling where you might feel like you need to know the story better. The only thing I'll mention for that one is there is a lot of talk about food and kind of like I don't know, like not diet stuff, but like adjacent to that. So just keep that in mind if that would be hard for you. But that's a really good one. And obviously, I'm always going to plug Still Star-Crossed. I think that's a really excellent one. And I do think it is actually one that can be enjoyed regardless of how much you know about Romeo and Juliet, because it's set after the play. So you don't actually need to have that much familiarity with Shakespeare. And like I said, I think the writing is a really good balance where it feels like it could have been in Shakespeare's era, but it's not like overly flowery and overly forced. Um, yeah.
Mhm. I will say, as much as I'm going to say where not to start, as much as I liked Odell's Fall, I don't think it's the best place to start. And I would also just don't start with Shylock is my name. That's not a great place to start. I do think if you've really enjoyed the plays and a retelling or like a spin-off that's in play format could be a good place to start. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Not Dead
Oh,
by Tom Stoppard is a really good play that's a lot of fun and
that is
just
a good one.
continues on with Hamlet. I think
Yeah.
that's also a nice place to start with retellings.
That is a really good one because it's quick and the language is really modern. And it's so wacky that like you really don't need to know Hamlet very much. But yeah, I need to
Exactly.
read more Tom Stoppard actually. I really
Me
enjoyed that
too.
one.
Me too.
Yeah.
So I think that's where I would say to start.
Yeah.
And
And
yeah.
I feel like he's one of the only like absurdist like playwrights that is not incredibly frustrating to read. Um I okay, like I feel like a lot of like modern playwrights think they can do they think they can do like what he does, the like postmodernism weirdness.
Mm.
And I feel like a lot of times it's just pretentious and it's like, sir, this should have been an essay. Like
I
but he's
do
really good.
I do like absurd plays, but I do tend towards the classic ones rather than the contemporary
Yes,
ones. And
and I'm sure there's other playwrights who do it that I would enjoy. I just haven't like read as much in that genre.
yeah. But yes, if you're going to go into the retellings, have fun. Have fun. Also, I was looking at the list and I saw These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong, which is one I do want to try as well, that I'm looking forward to trying. Too many. But shall we sprint again?
Yes.
And shall we go for 45 minutes?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. See you in a bit. just realized that we're at the end of that sprint.
I know, sneaks up on us.
How did it go?
It was good. I'm about 75 pages into it, and I'm really liking it. I hope this continues, but like it might end up being one of my favorite Beauty and the Beast retellings. It's really good.
That is high praise.
Yeah.
That is really high praise.
Yeah, like I'm hoping it continues like this. But yeah, it's very good.
That's good. I've only got 50 pages left of The Haunting of Aveline Jones, but because I'm doing a vlog project for it, I've stopped there because I need to update the vlog before I read the end. And I started the last count of Monte Cristo.
Yeah.
And I've discovered it's also cli-fi, so it's like the futuristic setting. A lot of it focuses on climate change, and it's set after the ice caps have melted, which is just I just wouldn't have expected it in a Count of Monte Cristo retelling. So it's like an interesting addition.
Yeah. Very intrigued to hear how it is.
Yes. It seems to be, at least like the beginning is quite a close, like the storyline is the same, but it adds something new to it, I think, because the setting and the situation around it is so different.
Yeah.
Which,
yeah.
See how it goes. Lizzie popped in to say hi. I think gaming after chatting and discussing is a very good, like, relaxing end to the weekend.
Yes.
And you wrote almost 800 words. Well done. Very productive.
Yeah.
I'm like getting into my relaxed zone. So I was not paying attention to the time. I was just reading very happily.
Yeah. Yeah.
I see. Are those all candles behind you, by the way?
Yes. And actually, okay, this is perfect because some of them are Shakespeare themed.
Ah, love it.
This is Beatrice, my fave.
Nice.
Yes. Yes.
I was listening to Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky. That sounds good. I've been keeping an eye on this one. I do want to try that series.
Yeah.
Have you read it?
I've read the first one and I really enjoyed it, and I need to continue. I feel like this keeps happening to me where, like, with the Rick Riordan Presents books, I'm really excited to read them, but I just don't prioritize them. I think because there's some of the only middle grade that is like mainstream popular right now. So it's not that I like deliberately don't read them, but I kind of am like, I think subconsciously I'm like, okay, people already know about those. I can pick up other things to read and recommend, you know?
That's so interesting as well, because although I do hear quite a bit about them on BookTube, they're not as popular here in the UK, I don't think. The middle grade fantasy I'm hearing about is just so different, and it's strange to me because I feel like in terms of like young adult fiction, regardless of which side of the sea, you hear about the same ones, and in adult fiction you often hear about the same ones, but for middle grade I really don't see people talking about American authored middle grade books much over here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it goes a little bit the other way too, because like Frances Harding, for example, who I love and is one of my favorites, she is just barely getting known here because of her last couple books that have been a little bit more like mainstream popular. And even like there are some middle grade books that are by UK authors that are like also published here, and like the Book Wanderers books are fairly popular here, but I think that's kind of the exception. Yeah, it's interesting. And I think also just publishing is so dominated by the US that like just across age ranges, I think it's less likely for a UK based author to be like to get to the same level of like knowledge and popularity here. So, yeah.
It's interesting. I feel like it'd be interesting to look into it more, but that's a whole other can of worms.
Yeah.
I end up not continuing them a lot because I decide I want to share them with my kids, but they aren't quite old enough for some of them yet.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I think, did I tell you that I've been doing like lots of picture book shopping for my
No.
upcoming niece or nephew? And um, yeah, I was watching your like graphic novels and picture book video and taking a lot from there, but it's a lot of like, oh, I love this middle grade book, I love this picture book, but they're not going to be quite old enough for it yet for the time being.
Yes. Yes.
You keep it simple.
Yeah. Well, and the nice thing about books is, I mean, I guess like with clothes and things too, arguably, but like they can grow into them, you know. It's like you can gift them like when they're born, but eventually they will be able to read them. But yeah. Yeah, I know. It's like sometimes like the middle grade books, especially that I read, I'm like, I love this, but like probably not for a 9-year-old. Like
Yes, exactly.
maybe. So
Gotta be patient with that kind of thing. Also, we were talking earlier about different characters, and we talked about the king in A Winter's Tale, and it made me wonder who is the worst male character, do you think?
ooh, this is a good one. This is like when we do our Past It Classics awards, it's like the award is like most trash man. So I feel like this is similar. I I think I have to give it, like, my first thought was Iago, and I
Mm-hmm.
still think he's one of the worst, but I think I have to give it to Angelo from Measure for Measure, because he's just so modern. Um and I hate the way he basically gets forced into a happy ending
Mm.
that I don't think he deserves. Yeah, I mean, like the confrontation with Isabella where he's like, well, nobody would believe you even if you said it. Like that like haunts me. Like,
Yeah,
so I think Angelo.
is the worst man.
I mean, there's some stiff competition, but I think Angelo's the one I have the most visceral response to. Him and Iago. Yeah.
Mm. Mm. When I was watching people's TBRs, I did not realize the venom people had towards King Oberon. I didn't realize he was so hated as a character, but I love it.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that.
Yeah. He sucks as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's some awful men. I'm trying to think who is my least favorite. I do think I tend to focus on like the unfortunate men more than the ones I dislike the most.
Yeah.
I think Iago's pretty horrible. I would agree with that. I struggle with I forgot his name, the one from The Taming of the Shrew.
Ugh, Petruchio. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I personally struggle with him the most.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can only stand him when it's like a retelling that completely changes. Like,
Yeah, exactly. When it's not him, that's the only way we
when
can
it's
stand
not him. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good
And then I
one.
guess for best man, you would put Benedict then.
Absolutely. Yeah. And not just because like I love him and Beatrice, but like I genuinely feel like he is one of the most like respectful of the female characters. Like the part with Hero at the wedding and her own father is like disowning her, and Benedict is one of the only people who's like, everybody calm down. Like let's like actually talk to Hero and ask what's going on. Um yeah. And I also love that even though he and Beatrice obviously have like a very very hate to love kind of story, and they like bicker a lot, I really love that it always feels like respectful of her as like an opponent. So yeah, Beatrice is my top Shakespeare, or yeah, Beatrice is my top Shakespeare heroine. Benedict is my top Shakespeare hero.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I'm trying to think. Do you know who took me by surprise? I think Anthony took me by surprise.
Mm.
And I quite liked just seeing this like military man talk about his feelings and end up being like quite soft inside and
Yeah.
just wanting to be happy. That's very
Yeah.
wholesome to me. I don't know if
Yeah.
that makes him the best man, but
It
probably
could
one
also
of,
just be your favorite. Yeah.
yeah, one that I feel very fondly towards.
Yes.
Not the best man, but maybe the most entertaining. Full stop? Question mark?
Yeah. I am not a fan of Falstaff, but like there are definitely those characters where it's like you are not great, but I'm having a good time with you. Like
Yeah,
let me think of what would be the most. I mean, like the most where I'm like I feel a lot of sympathy for you even though your decisions are questionable would probably be Hamlet, like we
yeah.
were talking about. Um yeah. One okay, this is not exactly the same thing, but one that like I would defend. I feel like a lot of people don't like him, and I'm like, okay, but is Laertes because
Mm-hmm.
I feel like a lot of people for I understand why they like interpret his conversations with Ophelia as like, oh, he's playing into like all of the misogyny and the sexism and like the things that he says to her about, like don't let Hamlet do things to you, basically. Like I get that, but I've always read that as like he's trying to look out for his sister the only way he can, like not necessarily that he's endorsing the like misogyny, of his era, but he's like, look, this is the world we live in and I just don't want you to get hurt. So
Yeah.
I have a fondness for Laertes.
It definitely gives me older sibling vibes more than problematic vibes. And I'm sure my sisters would say the same thing to me if I was in Ophelia's situation.
Right. It's like we shouldn't have to think about it like this, but because
Mm.
we do, I want you to be careful. Yeah,
I
exactly.
don't dislike Laertes, but I think the role that he plays in the play, he does not have enough character to carry him. Um,
Yes.
I feel like he
Yeah.
does so much, but is so like could be any man
Yeah.
in some ways, which
Yeah.
is why in my All the World's a Page fan fiction style play, I kill them off. It's like you can be there to be tragic, to be one of the dead bodies that end up on the end of the stage.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
yeah.
he has so much like plot stuff in the play, but not a lot of time on his character.
Mm,
Um, so I would definitely agree with that. Um, yeah, okay. I'm trying to think of like a comparable one to you were saying for Falstaff. I guess like Mercutio, like I I love him, and he's kind of like I don't think he's like annoying, and I don't think he's like a trash man like some of these others, but he's definitely one where I'm like, yeah, some of the things he says are not great, but
yeah,
I just love every time he's on stage. Like what an icon.
he is great. I actually feel like Mercutio and Tybalt, they could be an interesting duo for
Mm,
a story or a spin-off.
very messy. Yeah.
Very, very messy.
And Mercutio, like both of them are like just very messy people. So
Yes.
like that's why when I was doing my like one of my Romeo and Juliet inspired like fan fiction TBRs, I knew I wanted to have Mercutio as one of the main characters, and I'm like, who would be like the most dramatic like person? I was like, Juliet. I was like, I could totally see that happening. That would be like the most disastrous love triangle
Oh
in the
my god.
world. But I think for similar reasons, Tybalt would also work.
The drama. I feel like Romeo and Juliet is just made like whatever mix up you do, there's drama. It's gonna happen.
Yes, exactly.
Oh. I think Kelly's mentioning, going back to talking about picture books, that sometimes they're able to read them before
Mm,
you think if parents read to them, and they might just like to glance through the pictures,
mm,
which is
that's a
very
good
true.
point. Yep.
True. Hmm. I'm wondering, like, what other Shakespeare questions I can come up with.
Yeah. Okay, I know this is like kind of a funny thing to say for Shakespeare because, like, he's widely. It's not like he's an underhyped author, but do you think there is a play by him that should get more credit or attention than it does?
I feel like the ones that get the most credit tend to be either to do with the writing or the story. And I think they're like they made the right choices with the ones that you end up reading the most and the ones that people hear about.
Mm,
I feel like you've got the like Romeo and Juliet, Hamlet side of things, and you've got the ones that are kind of in the middle, like Coriolanus and like Othello, where some people read them, Anthony and Cleopatra, but not everyone. And then you've got the ones that like not no one reads, but you've got to really be a big fan of Shakespeare to read them.
mm-hmm.
And the one that interests me the most from that last category that I think could be interesting to have more discussions on would be the Two Gentlemen of Verona. I think it's called
Mm,
that, where
mm-hmm.
it's like education versus romance, and a lot of it seems to have a lot of you can have a lot of discussions about like toxic masculinity and
Yeah.
academia and classism, and I feel like it's just one that could be benefited from like a lot more unpicking and examining. But I will say it's not like the most beautifully written one, so I can see why it doesn't carry
Yeah.
that popularity.
Yeah. And I wondered too if the some of those issues at the end, if maybe that is one reason why it doesn't get talked
Mm,
about as much, but it should be. Yeah. Um I think like the one that I have the most like strong feelings about that is like relatively I think underread like you were saying is probably Measure for Measure.
mm,
And like for similar reasons, I think there is so much to discuss with that play. I think it is like really depressingly still relevant. Um, and even though like I hate the ending, it's like it's a play I think about a lot. Like I wrote so many papers on it,
mm.
and I think it's one that like some of the dialogue and like the ideas would be great to discuss. And I think there are some really interesting character things to talk about too. Um,
I
yeah,
remember I remember finding it a challenging one when we did it at university because I think it might be one of the longer ones, but if it isn't, it has a lot happening in it at different levels. So
yeah,
it was a bit more difficult to like grasp and get your head around, but I do think it is actually like a really good one. And I read The Merchant of Venice in secondary school
mm,
and I liked it back then. I haven't reread it since, so I don't know how I feel about it now, but I do think Measure for Measure is one that could be swapped over with The Merchant of Venice to kind of talk about what people try to talk about with The Merchant of
yeah,
Venice in a play that might be a bit better to tackle those kind of subjects with.
yeah, yeah. I agree.
It's if you had to say like which plays should people study in school, because I feel like it's almost inevitable that you always come across at least one Shakespeare play. Which ones do you think are the best ones to study?
That's a really good question. It's hard not to just like instinctively go with my favorites, you know, because some of the things I love about them are that I think there is so much to discuss. Um, I will say probably not most of the histories. Like
Yes, no
I
histories.
I haven't read honestly, I haven't read most of them yet. I still need to, but it's like even Richard III, which I think is one of the more interesting ones. It's like I read it like 3 times in different classes and
Mm.
I still in the later times I was reading, I'm like, which Edward is this? Like which I mean to be fair, we definitely don't talk about like British royal history very much in our classes, so we probably had less
Fair.
context, but um in terms of like ones that I think should be taught, I think so we actually read I didn't read very much Shakespeare in high school actually. Um but one of the ones we did read was Hamlet, and I actually think that is a pretty good one to read, like, because I think a lot of us in the class kind of like connected with his like teenage angsting. And I think that's one of the things that can make it more relatable
Mm-hmm.
to students. So I think that one wouldn't be a bad one. Um, I also like I have to say Much Ado About Nothing too, because I think it's fun and I think it will feel less intimidating because it's fun, but I think you can still have a lot of great discussions about like gender roles and um like the way the like conflict of that play is handled. So I think that could be one that is approachable, but that there's still so much to unpack. Um
Mm-hmm.
which we did not read Much Ado About Nothing in high school. So I think I would say we should have. So
Nice.
yeah.
Um, I'm biased because the one that we started with was A Midsummer Night's Dream,
Mm,
and it just, I think it did have probably a big effect because it just framed Shakespeare as fun for
yes.
me moving forwards. Because we just like, we read it, and I just remember like on the board there was like arrows between like who loves who, and it was like, this is a
Yes.
love triangle. And it was just like using tropes that felt very approachable to us at the time. And yeah, the teacher was getting all the like boys dressed in dresses and the girls with the swords, and it was a lot of fun. While we also did look at some of the things that Shakespeare like does, like literary devices and tropes and stuff, it doesn't get too deep into that in A Midsummer Night's Dream. So it was a good basis to
Yeah.
then move on to other things with without getting too deep into it, I think.
Yeah. That would be a good one. I actually was thinking of that too as like for our discussion of like which ones are relatively underappreciated. I feel like A Midsummer Night's Dream is often dismissed as like it's a fluffy comedy,
Yeah.
whatever. And like it kind of is, but in addition to being fun, it has some really great language and characters, and there are really interesting things to talk about. So I
Mm.
support that choice.
And it's got ambiguous ending in some ways, which
Yes. Oh my gosh. I have feelings about that love potion thing. Like,
I think he does it. I think Shakespeare does it in. Oh, I can't remember the title of the play. The one with Bertram and
oh,
Rosamund or something.
yeah. Is it As You Like It?
Yes, As You Like It. Yes, and I think putting those two together, because they've got so many similarities, like in the forest and doing all this stuff, would be so interesting as a study. But I never
Yeah.
got to do that. But I think that would be a lot of fun. And they both have
Yeah.
dark, but also happy endings.
Yeah. As You Like It is a funny one because I always think of it as like, or one of the things I always remember about it is like, oh yeah, when Shakespeare convinced me with Instalove, that happened off page because it's just so beautifully written, like the no sooner looked what they loved kind of thing. It's like I'm
Mm.
like this makes no sense, but I'm here for it. It's fine. Like
We'll just roll with it this time, okay? We'll just go with it.
exactly.
Kelly, only read the tragedies in high school, Romeo and Juliet, Julius Caesar, Macbeth. I think would have benefited from reading a comedy because you get the language a bit more fun. That makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, I don't know why they gravitate to assigning tragedies so much more.
Mm,
Seems weird to me.
it
I think
is.
we read Othello, most of it. Our teacher made such like weird decisions about like which ones we read, and like we were like partway through Othello and he was like, I don't think you guys are getting it, we're gonna watch the movie. And it's like, okay. It was just weird, like.
Sure.
And I think like a bigger issue or a bigger like reason is that like he wasn't giving us very much time to read it. Like we were like an honors English class, but I'm like, I don't think it's reasonable to assign an entire act a day of a Shakespeare play for students who aren't super used to his language.
Yeah,
Just felt weird. I don't know.
that seems like a lot of work and not the best
Yeah.
approach to.
Yeah.
Also, to cut it off, just I think there's so much subliminal messaging that happens in education, and being like, you guys aren't getting it, we're just stopping there, is not the best way to approach that issue.
Exactly. Yeah.
Um, Yeah, especially
Mm-hmm.
at 15 or 16, I think more teens would be interested. Yeah, definitely agree. I think we did Midsummer Night's Dream, Merchant of Venice. That was it. Wow, we didn't have good choices either.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the Midsummer Night's Dream choice. I don't think Merchant of Venice is a good next one. I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, like, I guess another educational Shakespeare hot take I have is I don't necessarily think it's always a good thing to pick the ones that everybody knows already.
Mm,
Because I think it can make people tune out. And I think it's good to have a balance. Like, yeah, you want to have some that maybe people are more familiar with. Um, I think that can make it feel less intimidating. But I think that one of the reasons that classics in general can be so hard for people to get into is that we have all these like almost rules about them that like regular books don't have, you know? And it's
yeah,
like, it's like you should be interested in what comes next. Like, not necessarily that you have no idea what the play's about or what's going to happen, but like it can be really fun to like read. Like when I read Mansfield Park by Jane Austen for the first time, I had no idea what the ending was. I
mm,
didn't know what was going to happen because I had somehow managed to like avoid hearing people talk about it. And I think it can be really fun to have that experience. Like whether or not you like literally don't know what's going to happen, or just like one that you haven't like heard the story 1,000 times, you know? Like I
yeah,
think teachers pick those because they think it'll be easier to approach, which I
mm,
get, but I think that should be balanced with like, okay, but they should be more excited, you know, more like interested in it. Like maybe don't do the one that like everybody knows the story. They've seen like
don't do
100
Romeo and
movie
Juliet.
adaptations. Yeah, like it's like everybody knows that story, which is like not
Mm,
a bad thing. But if you're trying to get kids excited about Shakespeare, I don't know, don't pick something that everybody knows.
yes, I might put. I think then my starter syllabus is going to be A Midsummer Night's Dream and then maybe Macbeth, because at least when I was 15 or 16, I'd heard elements of Macbeth, so it had
Mm-hmm.
that familiarity, but I still had no idea how it was going to end. I just knew like bubble bubble, toil and trouble,
Yes, yes.
and that murder was going to happen. That's all I really knew.
Yeah.
Um,
I think my starter syllabus then would be Much Ado About Nothing and Measure for Measure.
mhm.
Very different, but also talk about some of the same ideas. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah.
I will say that I do often recommend Romeo and Juliet to people who English is not their first language and they're trying Shakespeare or like trying a first classic, because I
Yeah.
think then that familiarity can help. I've never done it myself because I do think Romeo and Juliet as well has quite a lot of like wordiness, which
Mm,
might be contradictory to me recommending it in that case. But I think that's the case where I'm like, Romeo and Juliet is really helpful.
yeah.
Um, but you're right. Maybe in schools it's just a bit too familiar.
Or at least like they could read Romeo and Juliet and then they could read something like A Midsummer Night's Dream that is maybe less
Less known.
famous.
Yeah.
Or even like Twelfth Night, you know, because that one is like a lot of people have seen She's the Man, so they kind of know the overall story, but it would be fun to have that background and then to read the actual Shakespeare play, I think.
Did you watch any films? Because we watched the Michelle Pfeiffer A Midsummer Night's Dream after we read it, and we watched Shakespeare in Love, which I'm surprised the teacher chose that one, but that was the other one we watched.
That's funny. Yeah, we did actually watch quite a few. We watched I think we watched the adaptation for Othello. I'm pretty sure. Um, we watched a Romeo and Juliet adaptation. Was it the one that was like they were high schoolers or something? I don't know. It was an
Is it
interesting
the
choice.
one with like Leonardo?
It might be. I have very vague memories of that. I just remember that I think they were in high school.
Yeah.
And then we also watched the Twelfth Night adaptation with Helena Bonham Carter, which is a fun one.
I still haven't seen
Um,
that.
yeah, it's good. And then we also did we watch? I think we might have only watched part of Much Ado About Nothing, which is a travesty because I think that's a fantastic adaptation. Apart from Keanu Reeves as the villain. Like, I like Keanu Reeves, but he does not do a great job in that role. But like the movie as a whole, I think is a really good adaptation. And did we watch any others?
Thinking of, I think we did also watch the Romeo and Juliet 1968, like the older one where he looks like Zac Efron but is not Zac Efron.
That's right.
I think
Zac
the teacher
Efron,
presented it to us that way, and then we were all like, okay, let's watch it.
That's some smart teaching right there. Like,
it was the High School Musical, like they were still coming out or something, so everybody was still kind of excited.
Yeah, that's really funny. Yeah, I'm trying to remember if I think those were the main ones we did. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, teaching Shakespeare is so interesting. I would love to try it, but also I feel like I would not know where to start.
I know.
Just imagine all these young people like looking at me like. I feel like it's also daunting, and I feel like generally some classics get called daunting when they're not as daunting as they might seem, especially like Shakespeare. When you put the year next to it, it sounds like really old, but I do think his language is often, not always, more approachable than the image you have in your mind.
And I think a big part of that is, and I have this problem too with other classics, is like I try and understand every sentence and, you know, like every combination of words, and like it's a hard instinct to fight. But I think like with Shakespeare, a lot of people who think like, oh, I can't do it, I just don't get it. It's like, you will get what people are talking about though. Like you'll understand what's going on, I think, better than you think. Especially if you're able to like watch like a performance at some point, like a video clip or anything like that. It's like, even if you couldn't translate word for word what they're saying, you're like, oh, okay, they're fighting because of this person, you know?
Yeah.
And yeah, like I agree. I think that his language, there are definitely parts that are, you know, a struggle to get through, or plays that are more dense than others. But his actual language, I think, is, people get it more than they think they do. Like I remember one of my acting professors who, like, his specialty was teaching like classical, like acting for Shakespeare, basically. I loved that class. And one of the things he said is like, a lot of times actors have the feeling that they need to slow it down when they're performing Shakespeare because people will get it more. And he's like, it's actually the opposite. Like, it needs to feel like a real conversation. People need to be talking as if they're actually talking like in real life. And that is what helps people understand, not like slowing down and like having to focus on these words that we don't use anymore. It's like, people will get what the characters are doing and who they're talking about and who's on what side, even if they can't like translate every single word you're saying. And I think about that a lot.
Yeah, that's really true. And I think sometimes it's okay if it goes over your head a bit. I think when I first read like Romeo and Juliet, for example, or like all of those jokes, the comedy elements to Shakespeare often upon reading goes over my head, and I'm like, but then when I watch it, I get the jokes more, and probably because of the actors and like the conversation flow and everything. But I do think it's okay if sometimes things go over your head.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes a play like Troilus and Cressida, that whole thing went like, oh.
I mean, some of these history plays, man, like they're a struggle. I mean, I haven't actually read a history play in a while, so I probably would get it a lot more now. But yeah, like even like, which one did we read? Was it like Henry the Fourth? Is it part 1 or part 2? I don't remember. But it's like, I always had to have like a Wikipedia page open and be like, what actually just happened? Like, who are these people? Like, too many names that are all the same name. And like, it's like we sometimes joke, like when we're watching or like reading any kind of like British historical fiction, we're like, they only had like 3 names for their like.
It's true. I think Wuthering Heights was like the epitome of that for me, because the mom and the daughter, and I was just like, no,
Yeah.
No, not in the
Yeah.
same house, not while they're both interacting. Like, we can't have this.
Yeah. And
Um,
what was almost like more confusing is that like they would name their kids like after the last names of other people. So like it wasn't just like Catherine and then like also there was another Catherine. It was like there was somebody, I don't remember his first name, somebody Linton. And then like there was a son named like Linton Heathcliff. And it was like, wait, what?
yeah. And when they
No.
refer to each other by last name sometimes, and then by first name is sometimes, it's like, I can read like Tolstoy and understand who everyone
Yes.
is because they at least have different names.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh,
Do you like Great Comet? Have you listened to
I
the like
haven't listened to
okay,
it.
it's really good. But it's one of my favorite like stories about it is that like the opening song is basically like an introduction song where they're like singing about all the characters, and the reason that song is in there, this is what I heard, is
Mm.
that when critics were like watching the preview performances, they were like, well, you know, it's a good show, but like I don't know who anybody is, this is like really confusing. And so they like wrote a song to be at the beginning of the show that introduces everyone, and it's like some of the words are so funny. They're like, it's a complicated Russian novel, everyone's got 9 different names, so look it up in your program, we appreciate it, thanks a lot. It was like so funny. It's like that whole first song is just like, here's all the people and here's what you need to know about them, open your program, we already told you. Like,
It's like, we've given you directions.
yes. I love it,
I
I
love
love it.
that. I
Yeah.
I I tend to like seeing things in performance before I listen to them,
Mm,
but it's not come to performance while I've been here. So someone needs to do
yeah.
that. I don't know if speaking it on the live show will manifest it, but please.
Yeah, I there's some shows that I'm like, oh, I know I want to see it before I listen to, but for the most part, I've kind of just gotten into the habit of like watching clips and listening to the music, and
Mm,
that being a way that I can experience a show, especially because there's some that I don't think are ever going to tour near me.
yeah.
Like actually for a long time, they were saying that Great Comet probably wouldn't tour because so much of the staging is like specific to their set.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, I've just had to like experience shows in other ways.
yeah. I mean, that's why I love all those like broadcast things. Like, the majority of the Shakespeare
Yes.
I've seen has been through that rather
Yes.
than on stage.
Yeah.
And yeah, I
I really hope that they keep doing that
agree. Mm,
for different shows, like because it's the kind of thing where like people who want to see theater live are still going to do it. You know,
yes,
it's not like you're eating into ticket sales by letting people who don't live there like get to
exactly.
experience it. So, yeah.
And yeah, the more accessible you can make theatre, the better. So
Exactly.
it's just lovely.
Exactly.
But we should probably do another sprint.
Yeah.
Yeah, 45
Sounds good.
minutes. Sounds
Sounds
good?
good. Yes.
Okay, let's read. And that is the end of our last reading sprint. Oh, I see someone's joined us for the first time. Hello. We are coming to an end of our live stream, unfortunately, but thanks for hopping on. How did that last reading sprint go for you?
It was great. I am like halfway through the book, so I think I can definitely finish it today, and I'm really excited. Like, I still really, really like it. I haven't like read other people's early reviews for it, but I saw like the average rating isn't super high, and I don't know. I disagree with that so far. I just think it's really smart. Like, the parts of the fairy tale that it's using, I think are really smart, and I think it feels like a really thoughtful handling of the kind of trauma that our main character has, um, while still having like the pieces of the fairy tale that I think make sense. So I'm really enjoying it.
It's
And
always
enjoying
nice.
is a weird word, but
It's always nicer when you go against the unpopular opinion and you like it more than other
yeah.
people seem to be.
Yeah. And I was expecting to like it. Like, that's obviously why I requested it when they offered it for review, but it's like even better than I was hoping for, which is always nice.
Nice. And I don't actually know how much I read. I read more of I had dinner and I read more of the Last Count of Monte Cristo, about 50 pages in, and I'm really enjoying it. It also feels in some ways like I'm just rereading the original, which is like gives me the nice vibes of getting to consume that story again. But it's adding some interesting political and scientific elements to it too, which is nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Well, I think we're going to be ending the sprint soon, but thank you for joining us, and thank you to everyone who joined in with All the World's a Page. I hope you had fun. I hope you managed to make your fanfiction style Shakespeare plays and that all ended up the way you wanted them to. Is there anything else you wanted to add?
I don't think so. I think that's pretty much it. Can't believe this is round 4.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, and definitely, I mean, all 3 of us, like Julia, I know couldn't be here for these sprints, but all 3 of us read Shakespeare things throughout the year. So if that is something that you like, stay tuned, I guess. But
Yes.
yeah, it's been a great readathon. So
it has been. I haven't put them in because I made this one quite quickly, but I'll put Julia and Cara's channels down below. They are wonderful hosts of the readathon. It's always fun to host with them. And yeah, thank you for joining us. And have a good evening, all.